I'm John Readman. I'm the founder and CEO of a marketing AI business called Modo25, and we're the developers of a piece of AI software for marketing agencies called BOSCO. And when I'm not doing that, I'm also cycling to Australia with my charity cycling business, Ride25.
Brilliant. I'm going to start with the charity cycling business, which I have followed but not been on a ride with you. And are you actually riding to Australia? I mean, like literally or metaphorically?
Yeah, some people think we're doing it like on a turbo trainer in the garage, but no, we are physically cycling from London to Sydney in 25 stages over 25 years. We've got the first group, which we call the Ride25 Pioneers, and they're already in Tbilisi. And this year I will fly out with another 90 odd souls, and we will set off from Tbilisi to get to Azerbaijan and to Baku. And that was leg 11. So we're 11 years into the 25-year adventure. There was a few, obviously, COVID years which caused issues. And then the next year, we've got a bit of a challenge because that first group needs to cycle across Iran. So that's a little bit tricky. So we might go India first, and then when it calms down in Iran, come back at some point and do Iran. So, and we raise money for an orphanage that we fund with 280 kids in Ginger in Uganda. So trying to kind of help change their lives and give a more positive future to some people, some vulnerable children.
And why did you decide to take 25 years in chunks to cycle to Sydney? What was there?
As all good stories started, it started with a good bottle of red wine. A friend of mine, Rob, was basically suggested we needed a thing. So we were all married. There was no more stag do's. We needed something that gets a good group of people together every year that didn't just involve boozing and a golf trip or something. And he said, well, why not cycle to Australia? And I was like, I'm a little bit busy. And he goes, no, we're not going to do it in one go. We're going to go one stage at a time. And we're going to cycle to, say, Paris. Then we'll go back to exactly underneath the Eiffel Tower where we finished the year before. And we'll set off again. Then we'll cycle to Geneva. Then we'll go Geneva to Milan. And then we'll go Milan to Rome. And he'd got it all worked out. And we were sat with a couple of bottles of wine working it all out. And I said, yeah, there's a thing in here. And then we started doing it. And then actually, when I left the agencies I was growing, I actually ran it as a proper business for 3 years. And we had a spreadsheet that was going to make us bigger than TUI. But that's another story that was a bit of a disaster.
I love it. It's like just pull it out to the right-hand side and auto-populate those cells. And if you look, you just scroll across and there you are, you've got $1 billion business. And all that other stuff. Like when I say to people, do you have a strategy? Do you have a plan? They get out their spreadsheet and it's like, no, that's just Excel madness. That's not a plan. That's just like where you might be. That's not how you're going to get there.
Well, we were sort of like, well, if we can get 80 people to do it with no marketing, no effort, and it was a bit Heath Robinson, well, if we professionalize this, we get thousands of people who want to do this. But there's only a small percentage of people who actually want to cycle to Australia, we found.
It's a target market problem.
And also, most of the people who do the cycling aren't proper cyclists. They're just people who like the camaraderie. So if you imagine we've been skiing together before, Dom, and that's on the digital stuff. It's like the e-consultancy digital ski trip, but on a bike. Slightly less Jaeger bomb, but it's about the camaraderie. It's about the shared spirit of adventure. You're doing something good for charity, and then for a lot of people who aren't getting younger, it gives them a big target to keep and get fit for. So if you know you've got to cycle 400 miles in 4 days across Turkey or Georgia, you'll keep and get yourself fitter.
And so that I was going to say, it's 400 miles in 4 days, 25 times, and that gets you to Australia?
Roughly, yeah, roughly. Some of them are 5 days. One of them's 3 days, but most of them are 4 or 5 days. And I can confirm that nowhere in the world is flat.
And how many people go on the legs, and how many people have done them all?
No, well, we've got of the 90 that are doing leg 11 this year, I'd say 80% have done all the legs. And you get a badge for every leg. And if on your shirt, if you've done the leg, it's coloured in, and if you haven't, it's greyed out. So everybody knows. So it's like you're fully wearing your medals of honour. And we had so much interest in joining the Pioneers we logistically couldn't do more than, you can't do more than 90 because you just can't. Some villages and hotels are places you can't find the hotels. There isn't enough beds. So we started a new group 2 years ago called the Founders, and that's for CEOs and founders only. And we found they were the best connected people, the people who actually raised the most money, and also the most interesting people. So we now have the Founders Ride that has another 90 people on. And then the idea is in maybe another 5 or 6 years, we'll set off another group of founders, because there'll be a whole new generation of founders coming through. And the idea is between these events, we can raise £250,000 a year, which is how much we need to keep the orphanage going.
Are you the only money for the orphanage? Are you their only?
80-90% of it, yeah.
Okay, so there's no pressure.
No. So these children are all homeless unless we do this again. No pressure. Yeah, but we had a big meeting with Harry, who actually runs it, and there's really some of the inspiring. So there's some of the children at the orphanage started cycling because they were inspired by us cycling. And I was like, this is great. So I got together with a friend of mine at Sigma Sports, which is a fancy bike shop in London, who I've worked with for years. I said, any chance we can get some bikes over to these kids? Because they're on these really terrible bikes. So a few of us went over to the orphanage and did a bit of a tour, took them. They thought they were our bikes. We said, we'll come cycling with you. Then we left them the bikes. And they're like mid-range road bikes, good bikes, better than the bikes they could get. And they entered some local bike races, set up a little team. And in the recent UCI World Championships in Glasgow, 3 of the 5 people representing Uganda were from our orphanage.
No.
Yeah.
So, do you believe that your orphanage, the kids at your orphanage are uniquely talented, or is it merely access to bikes?
I think it's probably a bit of both. But Mary is now assigned cycling professional. So for a female young Ugandan to become a professional sports person is highly unusual. And she's cycling with a professional team now in Italy. So and that inspires the other children. They're not all going to become professional cyclists.
No, but you just need a few people to be role models, and it can be transformative. Did Uganda previously have much of a professional cycling?
No, not really. And that's why the numbers are so low. And there's a lot of infrastructure problems, a lot of funding problems, a lot of corruption problems, as you read about. But there's also a lot of talent. And there, I suppose, if you look at the long distance runners, for Ineos, some of the guys are getting picked up by the Ineos development team now, because they've worked out as well is that a lot of the genetics of where these kids have grown up and come from are predisposed to endurance, like the long distance runners. So it's only a matter of time before the pro peloton in the Tour de France. So our longer term mission is, can we get some of them into the Tour de France? That'd be amazing.
It takes that sort of your vision, I guess, of changing lives to a totally different level. You know, like at one level, it's like orphans off the street. Now it's like career aspiration, impact at a national level. Brilliant.
Yeah. So but running the cycling business as you said, the spreadsheet didn't work. We dragged it right. That didn't work. And what the acid test was, I actually went on Dragon's Den to pitch the idea to them. And we were making money as we do corporate cycling events, and we'd try and sell packages to go cycle from Milan to Rome or whatever. 2 things sort of happened there. One, we didn't get onto the Americans early enough, because the Americans actually love all this and they get a small amount of holiday and they're happy to invest quite a lot in a real big adventure in Europe. So towards the end, we thought maybe there is a business in this. But we actually made some really good money. We ended up organising all the corporate cycling for people like Sky and for people like Google and people like Facebook. And Sky Bet and people. So actually, it was financially a bit of a disaster. But the network I've gained through organising all these cycling events has been phenomenal. And my co-founder on the current business, which is Moto25 and BOSCO, I met on the bike ride. I met him. There's this term in cycling called bonking, which basically means you've not eaten the right amount of food. You've completely undercooked yourself, and you're dying on the bike. And this chap went past me and he goes, "You all right?" And I goes, "Oh, no, I'm really struggling." He goes, "Right, sit on my wheel." Anyway, we bonded over into this headwind over these rolling hills in southern France. And Bond's now my lead investor and a really close friend. And it wasn't until the next trip that I actually also found out he was the founder of Skyscan. And it's just, it's in one way, it was a commercial disaster, but arguably has opened up connections and network that you just couldn't buy.
Fab. So look, let's get into your current business. So you've got Modo 25, traditional agency, which is then
slightly different. It does all the traditional marketing agency things, but we've got a belief, Dom, that the future of some of the doing is better done in-house. So do you want to be paying 500 quid a day for someone to be pressing buttons and optimizing Google ads? Or is the strategy piece the more important piece and you can maybe learn how to do it yourself? So having learned this in previous agencies, when the phone rings and the client goes, "We're going in-house," and you just like panic. I'm thinking, well, is there a business in teaching brands how to go in-house? Which bits they're going to be able to in-house? Which bits they're unlikely to successfully in-house? What tools do they need? What strategies do they need? So we help brands go in-house over time, and we do it for them for a while. We then recruit and train them a team to do it. And then we then watch their team do it. And then we sit in the background with our technology, which is the BOSCO technology part, to keep an eye and help them. And then if somebody leaves or goes off sick, we can dive in and it's almost like this concertina support model.
And that's established brands or that's scaling brands? Because I can see how a scaling brand goes, we didn't have the skills, we had to have an agency. Now we're looking at the success and cost model, and it's like, let's bring it in-house.
Very good observation. Most of them are scale-up brands. So brands like Castor, we successfully in-house them. We did it all for them. Then we, over time, handed it back to them. Or say Paver's Shoes or Joe's the Bootmaker. But it's household name brands. It's people you would know. And it's also not all glamour and fancy fashion. There's a lot of big B2B companies now that are thinking, well, hang on, all this money we're spending with the agency, could we do some of this ourselves? And actually, how do we do it?
I was going to say, are those teams onshore or offshore?
Currently, they're all onshore and on-premise or working as an employee. So we don't put the people in. We help them recruit their people and make it work. And I think the other thing that's happened a lot over the last 10 years is people have tried to in-house. The person who started it leaves and then it falls flat and it's fades. So there's no backup plan or there's no broader strategy. It's quite difficult for them to sort of build a sustainable sort of in-house model. This gives them almost like an insurance policy where they've done it before and they go, "No, we tried that, it didn't work." And I'm like, "Yeah, but how did you do it? Did you have like people supporting you and know what they're doing and then have a backup plan? Or did you just cut all ties with your agency and trying to work out how to do it yourself?" So yeah, that's gone really well and is growing nicely, and there seems to be a lot of demand for it, and it's different.
And you wouldn't be able to achieve that without the technology, or you were doing that before the tech? You decided to come up with the tech. What's the genesis of the tech?
So a lesson for punishment. I didn't want to just do one startup. I'll do two at the same time with two separate teams. Modo 25 is the holding company, and BOSCO is, I suppose, the software. I often say like Modo 25 is like Microsoft and BOSCO is like Office is the way I could describe it. But basically, we learned how and what we needed to do with the software on our own clients in our own agency, as well as having years and years of experience from all the other teams. So the nicest thing about this business, and I'm sure you've had this when you've set up other businesses before, is you sort of write a list of who's my A list of people I'd love to come and work with me. And you sort of write their names on a piece of paper going, I wonder if I can get them away from what they're doing. You go back to all the great people you've worked with, and everybody on that list with one or two phone calls phoned me, and I phoned them or they phoned me and said, right, what we're doing. And we got the sort of band back together from three of my previous businesses, and all my leadership team have worked with me before. There was one guy, actually, our first sort of lead data scientist, Dr. James, and he sort of messaged me going, why haven't you got in touch with me? And I'm like, well, you're living in
mate, I don't like you.
No, he's like, I'd love to work with you again, John. And this guy's like double PhD, great. Anyway, I said, well, I thought you're in Melbourne, you might not fancy it. They said, no, I'd love to. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. He goes, what problem are you trying to solve? And I said, well, I'm trying to work out where people should spend their next pound. And he goes, oh, that's hard. Where are you going to get the data? How are you going to do this? And we just started talking. And then he started sending me papers and reading. And he helped us build the product. And then after lockdown, it worked really well during lockdown with Dr. James in Australia because they had really strict lockdown. He could do a lot of UK time. He wasn't allowed out of the house anyway. Then after lockdown with his young family and his wife, they thought that maybe he needed a job in Australia. And he's actually lead data scientist at McKinsey now. So he clearly was quite a good catch.
So you said there where to spend the next pound. So what does it do? Like, how is this software helping people?
So if you're if you're spending any money on Google and Facebook, and you're constantly working out where's the best place to spend my money, where should I place my bets to get what I want, whether it be more leads.
Just Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or
Facebook, Google, TikTok, Snapchat, Amazon. And that was the other thing when we were building it. There's lots of things out there that help you with Google. And there's lots of things out there that help you with Facebook. We wanted something that could help you with everything. Because actually, if you're spending money, you don't care where you spend your money as long as it works. But the other thing, and anybody sort of listening to this who's had a meeting with the Google rep or a Facebook rep, the answer is, if you go speak to Google, how can I increase my sales? It's spend more money with Google or it's spend more money with Facebook. Nobody ever says Facebook are never going to tell you to spend more money with Google and Google's never going to tell you to spend more money with Facebook. But actually, we wanted to create a system that joined all this up and helped. So the first part of this platform connects all your data together seamlessly and gives you this sort of really interactive dashboard. But then you can also, it's AI enabled, so you can just type in a question and say, what was my bestseller on Facebook last week? And it'll give you the graph and the detail and you can drill into it. But then once you've got that data in one place, we use the complex machine learning and AI that Dr. James started to help us build. And we can then predict where you should do, what you should do next. So rather than you going, right, I tell you what, we're going to try 10 grand on Facebook ads and see what happens. We can run a simulation and a scenario plan and tell you what's going to happen before you spend the money.
The platforms are different though.
Yeah, they are. In Facebook, you might be optimizing for impressions. In Google, you might be optimizing for conversions.
And do you know, does it tell you, because again, your campaigns you might not be running the same breadth or depth of campaigns on different platforms. So does it tell you that you should be doing something that you're not doing?
Yeah, so its first sort of thing is based on what you're spending, how could you spend it more efficiently and effective to get the result you want? That's like the default position first. But it might tell you to do things that are contradictory to what you thought. So it might say reduce here, increase there. It really depends. So you've got to ask it the right questions and we train it on your data. So it's all in a sort of walled garden. It's not going anywhere else. But basically you could go, right, I want to increase top line revenue. That's the ultimate goal. But there's certain constraints we don't want to play with. So we don't want to mess with our brand campaigns. We don't want to mess with this. But in Facebook, you'd set the target to impressions. And in Google Performance Max in, say, Google Shopping, you set it to a return on ad spend, for instance, and it will go away and look at all of those. You could even set different constraints for each individual campaign. All right, so it's hugely complex, but we're trying to make it simple so that you don't need to have your own data scientist to do this in-house, or if you're an agency, you can just use the technology.
If you were only running Google ads, does it say at the point you're at, you should now be running Facebook?
It could tell you that there's opportunity you're missing in other channels, yeah. And it also can benchmark the other bit we did. Do you remember Hitwise years ago?
Yeah, totally.
So Hitwise died, and I'm like, everybody used to love Hitwise, and so we've created the Ask BOSCO Index, which basically takes your online visibility across all your channels and compares it to demand, and then compares it to your peers. So you get a sort of score. And then a little league table. And again, C-suite love that because they're like, right, I don't need to know the ins and outs of black hat and white hat SEO, but my this index is going in the wrong direction. So we're not doing something right compared to our competitor. So that's something else we do to help people have sort of competitive benchmarking against themselves. But absolutely, it could highlight areas that you should maybe go into. But it's best for somebody spending in multiple channels who in an ideal world wants to reduce what they're spending and increase their sales, which I think is most people who spend money with Google and Facebook or Amazon or TikTok.
And what sort of spend do you need to be at to be able to leverage the technology?
So we built a version of this in a previous agency called Summit, and we built this version, a similar thing, just for Google Ads, and it was called Forecaster. But you needed £2 million a month of spend and 85,000 products. And Dr. James built that as well. And I was like, we need something. And we tried to sell that product to other people, and that was quite tricky because there wasn't many people spending £2 million a month with 85,000 products. So I was like, I think £10,000 to £20,000 a month spend across 2 platforms and it'll work. So it's not for everybody, but there's tens of thousands of businesses spending that sort of money around the world who would like to spend less and sell more.
Or frankly, spend more with confidence.
Well, exactly. Scaling with confidence. The ultimate question it will answer is, how much should I be spending?
Yeah.
So the elephant in the room, often in the boardroom, is you might have the CEO go and the CFO having a conversation going, why are we spending so much money on Google marketing? And they ask the CMO and they say, oh, that's what we need to spend. Well, how much should we spend? Well, that's what the agency have told me. And why the agency told you that? Well, that's what Google told them. And it's like, well, how much should we be spending is a really interesting question to answer.
Or your investors say, what if we gave you £1 million, what would you do with it? And you'd know the answer. I've seen that with many private equity or VCs that I talk to. You know, they're looking at an acquisition or they're looking at an investment and they want to know what the potential is.
Well, we actually, for quite a few advisory firms, we provide it almost like as a digital due diligence tool. So they can go in and see, right, where are they on that normal distribution curve? Is the demand, is the headroom, is it going to keep growing? Or do they need to invent more products, or do they need to go to new markets? And so, yeah, and it can do all that sort of maybe desk-based research that you'd have had an analyst doing. It can just do it at the push of a button.
This is your own machine learning, AI. You're not using ChatGPT.
No, it's not ChatGPT. What's funny, Dom, when we first built it and we were trying to talk to people about AI marketing, everybody was scared of AI marketing. Oh, we don't want the robots taking over. This is not good for marketing. So we were calling it marketing predictive analytics. We were calling it all different names because everybody was scared of AI. And then ChatGPT comes along and suddenly everybody wants a bit of AI. So that was actually sometimes business is about timing. The last 18 months has really changed people's perception of AI and what it can do. And I think ChatGPT opened people's eyes up to what it does. But ours is more around learning on large data and your own data to help you answer questions, but also running lots of models and scenarios and simulations to predict. So you can run, I don't know, if we spent this in this channel, this in this channel, this in this channel, what's going to happen? And you can go into the FD with 96% confident that if we give us that money, we're going to give you this much back in sales. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Fab. Now you've also from scratch built this business in some different ways. I was going to say unique, but other people have done some of these things, I guess. So, you know, you only work 4 days a week, you slacker. What's going on there?
Well, this is all I'm doing today. I've come in specially on my day off. To come and talk to you. I do. No, so a friend of mine, a guy runs an agency called The Lab, Johnny Toes. I saw him speaking at an event once, and I was like, he did the 4 day week, and he said, "Imagine if every week felt like a bank holiday. Wouldn't your team just be happier?" And it sort of stuck with me, got me thinking. And then he said the other thing, he said, we sort of approach it on that week before you go away on holiday, you get more stuff done. And if you could work that efficiently all the time, wouldn't you just get more stuff done all the time? So I then, before I set the business up, I did a lot of research, and there's a huge amount of research for and against, and most of it is for, particularly from forward-thinking companies in Scandinavia, around efficiency, productivity, profitability, staff attraction, staff retention. So we've grown this business to nearly 40 people, not paid any recruitment fees, right? And that's just phenomenal.
Okay,
right?
So that's unique.
Yeah, it's like, and so that's really interesting. So I wanted to create a business. Actually, when we wrote down things, I wanted to create a business that people queue up to work at. So we recently had everybody's saying they can't recruit data scientists. We had one data science vacancy and we had 35 people apply for it, all with PhDs. So it's about creating the right environment, the right culture for me. Because ultimately, even if you're a tech business, you're a people business. Every business is a people business. And we wanted to create something that was slightly different. So also, this was pre-lockdown and pre-COVID. I'm like, right, we're going to do flexible working. They can work hybrid. They can do this. They can do that. It's all about recruiting the people, trusting them, training them, empowering them. And then now everybody's doing hybrid working. So that's a bit annoying because I was quite excited about that at the beginning.
But you've got an office, so you're not fully remote.
No, we're not fully remote. We are hybrid. We have an office. We have, and I encourage people to come into the office, and we give them reasons to come into the office because I think elements of what you're doing, especially if you're recruiting young grads, part of learning is learning from other people sat around you, either their successes or their mistakes. So, but the 4-day week has worked really well for us. We've got very low churn in terms of people. It's not easy to recruit, but it's, I think, easier than other people find it.
But also where's your office?
Leeds, yeah.
So you're in Leeds, right? So it's not as if you've got, I mean, I remember when I opened Pier 1 down in Southampton and, I was moving from central London, living in Clerkenwell. And people said, oh, where are you going? I said, oh, I'm opening an office in Southampton. And they're like, oh, will you be able to get people? And you're like, what did they think? Like once you get outside the M25, people have only got, one arm and there's no electricity and it's just hysterical.
I think Leeds has got some fantastic universities, but also there's some big technology firms here, big banks, big IT change companies, there's Skybet, there's a lot of talent in the north. And we want to try and create the right environment to attract them. But also our sickness. So if you just look at our sickness is really low compared to anybody else in the same field of work as what we're doing. And I just think, and I don't know, maybe we recruit people who don't get sick, or maybe people have got a better lifestyle balance that they don't feel they need to take a sickie.
Look, I think in the sort of high performing, narrow stratospheric, high performing companies that I work with, like to be in the top 1% of businesses in the world, you need to grow 5 years on the trot, right? That puts you in 1% of businesses in the world. But, I think about back, our clients, my own time at Rackspace and Pier 1, we had no sickness. People just didn't happen. Like if you were off sick, it's because, you had a car accident and you were off for 6 weeks, not because you woken up on a Monday and you were a bit sniffly. Just didn't happen.
Yeah, and it's and then I also think it gives people, they tend to plan those life admin stuff for their day off. So getting the washing machine delivered or going to take the dog to the vet or whatever it is, they've got a time. And then it also means they get their weekend back. So one of the members of the team, Emily, she's like, no, by Fridays, I clean my house and I get all organized and then I can actually enjoy my weekend. And I'm not doing life admin at the weekend and I can have a nice weekend.
We haven't done 4 days a week, but we did a couple of years ago, we said to the team, what would be the best thing that we could change in terms of benefit? And they said, we do love a bank holiday. So we have a Monkhouse and Company extra bank holiday every month. And it's fab.
There have been times where behind development, we've got to hit a target where it's like, hang on, guys, we're working the day off. And it's, and everybody's on board with that and it's fine.
What? I was talking to Henry Stewart about the same thing, 4-day week. And at the time that one of the CFOs I work with, Kevin. So I said, look, Kevin will be listening to this. And what he'll want to ask me is, what if you just worked Friday? Don't you get 120%? Like if can't you work even harder? Do you just think you have really squeezed? Do you have fewer meetings? People doing less shit?
Yeah, that is exactly it. It's like, think about, is this a good use of my time? And like, you don't just put a meeting in for an hour, put it in for 45 minutes, or can you do it in half an hour? You can probably do most meetings that take an hour in half an hour, right? If we're really honest. Excellent meeting notes, excellent follow-up, excellent. Just doing things properly, Dom.
So here's the other thing that I think you've probably cracked. Would you enthusiastically rehire all 45 people?
What, in another business, or if...
No, just today, tomorrow, like say the keeper test. Like if they all resigned, would you try and keep them? And knowing what you know about them, would you hire them again?
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody. If I wouldn't, why are they still here?
Oh yeah, no, totally. But when I ask that question of clients that I'm working with, that's sort of the definition of an A player. And clients would typically, without having managed that specifically, would find themselves probably in a range of 10 to 35% of their teams. So the team size is probably a bit bigger. They're sort of on that 50 to 500 journey. Team size might be a bit bigger. The lowest has been 10, the highest has been 35, right? So if you've got 45 people who you would enthusiastically rehire, they're all A players. Now, McKinsey's done some work and they say, look, if you get somebody who's in flow at work, then they are 5 to 10 times more productive. They're 500% more productive, right? So actually, you're saying, look, we've got these A players. Our 4-day week allows us to attract A players 100% of the time. And you shave 20% off, you're still ahead, right? You still got people who are just way more productive than your competitors. That whole idea that, you've done more work on a Monday than your competitors will have done by Friday, just because they've got people who are okay, not great.
And we also give above market rate benefits for a company. But even when we were a startup, it was like full healthcare, full all the bells and whistles, increased pension contributions. They all get an EMI scheme from day one, or everybody in the company, not just the leadership team. So I gave away 20% of the whole company to the team. I've held some of it back for future hires, but I put a pot aside of 20% of the whole company. I'm a big advocate of the 4-day week. Other things we did differently. Well, I know you do this, but a big advocate on dogs in the office. Yeah. A big advocate of dogs in the office. So we had 5 in the other day. It's fun and nice, and there's nothing nicer than a happy dogs are just always happy, aren't they? How can you not be happy?
I remember, at Pier 1, we had a reputation in Southampton, and the Daily Telegraph had written about our office space and stuff. And I remember one of the girls took my dog for a walk at lunchtime. And she said she got stopped by somebody coming off the Fast Cat saying, do you work there? And she said, yeah. And he said, I bet that's the fucking office dog, isn't it? And she said, yeah. And he went, it fucking would be, and just walked off. And it's just like that. She came in, she said, I've been accosted by somebody who hates us, who doesn't even know us, but just the idea of having an office dog made them angry.
It's like you're allowed to have fun at work and make work. I want to make the environment of the office a place where people want to come, not just, and also because of the people, but also the environment and everything else. And it's not just my dog that gets to come to work. Everybody can bring the dog to work if they want. So, and we had one lady apply for a job, but she put on her application letter, I particularly don't like dogs. So on the days I come into the office, I would request there's no dogs. And I was like, oh, you're not going to get a job.
Well, look, I interviewed, we're in the office every day here. We're on the farm. I interviewed somebody for a role of a marketing manager recently, and CV looked great, chatting to this lady, having a great conversation with her. And I said, have you got any questions? And she said, yeah, just one. She told me that she literally lived a 4-minute walk from the farm. And I said, okay, what's your only question then? She said, can I work from home? It's like, no, that's not a thing. She's like, oh, okay, well, it's been lovely talking to you. I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We operate hybrid, but we encourage people 2 days a week in the office. And we have a company day every last Thursday of the month where we do a lunch and learn. We get somebody interesting to come and talk to them. We put some food on, then we have a team night out. I've heard you talk about this a lot in the past. I do think I don't know how there's some amazing successful remote only businesses, but I'm just not that type of leader. I think there's an energy you can't get across on a Zoom or an audio that you can get across in a room.
Yeah. Well, we were with FX Digital client the last couple of days on the farm, and, their purpose is human connection. And, it flows from their purpose all the way through to like, why do we want to be in the office with each other? And in fact, if you're the type of person who doesn't want to be in the office, you're probably not the right person for us, because actually our purpose would lead us to believe that we want to have deeper, more meaningful human connections rather than less.
Yeah, and I think some of the best ideas or problems get fixed whilst at the coffee machine or wandering down to do. I also think I try and do more face-to-face selling when I'm out with the team. And so I said, let's go on the road for a day. Well, what do you mean? I goes, well, let's book some meetings, go see some people. And they're like, well, I'm like, because that was like how you used to learn how to do stuff. And also it's the time sat chatting in the car or sat on the train. And the number of deals I've got intel in the lift about or in reception, whereas now you're just straight on the Zoom, straight off the Zoom, straight onto the next one.
Well, look, you were saying earlier on, look, your major investor was a guy you got to know on a bicycle, right, in France. So you invested before you ended up doing business together. Look, John, what books do you think have been inspirational to you on your journey thus far? What should people read?
Oh, well, if it's this far, we've got that'll take a while. I am a big and this is when my dad, we used to go on these holidays in France years ago when I was a kid, Euro camping, and he would listen to Zig Ziglar a lot. So I'm a big Zig Ziglar fan, and it was indoctrinating me from the age 7. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's a lot of positivity and a lot of value in a lot of his stuff. But a really interesting book I read recently, which I think this is a sort of, it's not a business book, but it says that it's about life, is Kevin Sinfield's Extra Mile, which is, so he's the former sort of GB rugby league captain and Leeds Rhino. And now I think performance coach for England Rugby Union, I think, or something. Anyway, he did all the running for his friend Rob Burrows and did all those crazy marathons. Book is phenomenal and just, he's moving. And then business book wise, is a book called The Multipliers by Liz Wiseman.
Liz Wiseman, yeah, we had her on the podcast talking about that.
I think maybe I got the
ages
book
ago.
Maybe I got the book after listening to it on the podcast. But anyway, now the good thing about that, there's a lot of stuff we were doing. There was also some stuff we weren't doing. And then I've got anybody who looks after anybody, whether it's a team leader or a manager, I highly encourage to listen to or read that book. It's brilliant.
In a few words, what drives you every day?
Trying to make the world a better place when I leave.
Oh, nice. What's your genius?
Energy.
I was going to say, in my mind, I had answered for you, which was optimism.
Yeah. Energy and optimism. Yeah.
What unpopular opinion do you hold?
Unpopular opinion. Yeah, I've got a big thing about being on time, and I get really annoyed. Someone turned up late for an interview the other day, and we just sacked them off. How
you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you can't turn up for an interview on time, what's the rest of it going to be like? So yeah, I'm brutal about little things sometimes, maybe obsessive about little things. And people think, well, that doesn't really matter. Well, it does.
I won't hire a salesperson who doesn't come in if they come in not having polished their shoes. It's just like that. It's like it tells me everything I need to know. Right. What's the most significant risk you've taken in your career?
A significant risk? I suppose setting up a cycling holiday company when I knew nothing about cycling and I knew nothing about holidays. That was a reasonable risk, and not paying myself for a few years.
It paid off in other ways. If
you look at our cap table of investors, I'd say 80-90% of them I've met on the bike. So either cycling, skiing or shooting is where I've got all my investors from.
How do you measure success?
For me, it's about how many other people have I helped become successful would be how I'd measure my success.
Nice. How would you want your legacy to be?
Well, I want to make sure I get to Australia. That's where to start. But no, if we can help change the lives of a few hundred people in Uganda, as well as everybody who's ever worked in any of our organisations, and also I've got two wonderful teenage daughters, and my wife and our family. It's like, well, if we can give them a better start in life than I had. So for me, it's the whole success and money thing is one thing, but if we can help other people enough and help our kids get on. So my 14-year-old daughter's just set her second business now. And that actually, I get more excited about that.
What have you learned recently?
It takes longer and more money to build AI technology platforms
than people think.
Yeah, than everything on the internet you read or watch or read or everything. It's going to take you longer. It's going to cost you more money and it's going to be harder.
What do you think is the biggest myth in business?
I think people think that it's either the business model or it's the attitude or approach. And people often forget that there's a lot of hard work required. I think people try and make it look easy. And there's a lot of videos, particularly on social and this, that, and the other. Oh yeah, I'm sat in my private plane. We did this, we did that. And I did this thing online and all the money just came. Yeah, that's bollocks. Maybe I've got it wrong, Dom, but I think people forget to talk about, you've got to get up early and work hard and you've got to put the hours in. And it's about the smart hours, right? It's about efficient hours. It's not just being a motivated idiot.
Okay. John, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you this morning. Enjoy the rest of your, I was going to say day off, but it's not really a day off. It's like, enjoy the weekend early.
Yeah, bank holiday. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Dom.